The silver bracelet slips from trembling fingers, hitting the cafeteria floor with a delicate clink that somehow pierces through the chaos of overturned lunch trays and scattered food. The engraved words catch the fluorescent light for just a moment. To my little sister, be strong like I taught you. 30 seconds later, 3 boys lie sprawled across lunch tables, their faces twisted in shock and pain. Luca Morrison's designer shirt drips with chocolate milk. Sterling Wade clutches his nose as blood seeps between his fingers, and Dex Hamilton sits dazed on the floor, surrounded by the remnants of what was once his turkey sandwich. The entire cafeteria has fallen silent, except for the soft drip of spilled drinks hitting linoleum. But 30 seconds before this moment, Harper Reynolds sits alone at corner table 12, methodically cutting her apple into precise quarter-inch slices. Her honey-brown hair falls like a curtain around her face, creating a barrier between herself and the 200 other students who fill Lincoln High's sprawling cafeteria with their daily symphony of gossip, laughter, and social maneuvering. She keeps her sea-blue eyes focused downward, studying the pages of To Kill a Mockingbird propped against her water bottle. The book serves multiple purposes: academic requirement, conversation deterrent, and shield against the curious stares that have followed her through 3 weeks at her new school. Her movements possess a careful economy, each gesture measured and deliberate, as if she has learned that drawing attention can lead to consequences she would rather avoid. The bracelet rests against her wrist, its weight both comforting and painful. 2 years have passed since Ryan gave it to her on her 15th birthday, 2 weeks before the accident that transformed her from someone's protected little sister into someone learning to protect herself. The memory lives in muscle and bone now, surfacing whenever her fingers trace the engraved letters during moments of stress or uncertainty. Harper takes a small bite of apple, chewing slowly while scanning the page she has already read twice. The words blur together as her peripheral vision tracks the social dynamics playing out around her. 3 tables away, the theater kids debate their upcoming production with passionate intensity. Near the windows, the Honor Society members compare notes for their afternoon chemistry exam. At the center of the room, occupying the prime real estate that comes with social dominance, Luca Morrison holds court with his usual entourage. If you're already sensing something big is about to unfold in this seemingly quiet cafeteria, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that prove appearances can be devastatingly deceiving. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Lincoln High operates on unspoken hierarchies that determine everything from seating arrangements to scholarship opportunities. Harper learned this truth within her first week, watching how conversations pause when certain students pass by, how hallway traffic flows around specific groups like water around stones. She has no interest in climbing these social ladders or challenging these established orders. Her goal remains simple: graduate quietly, avoid complications, and honor the promise she made at Ryan's funeral. Luca Morrison represents everything Harper hopes to avoid. At 18, he possesses the kind of classical good looks that make casting directors salivate, and college recruiters ignore questionable academic transcripts. His quarterback status grants him celebrity privileges within Lincoln's walls, while his father's position as mayor ensures that minor infractions disappear from his permanent record with convenient regularity. More importantly, Luca has developed a reputation for collecting beautiful girls like trophies, displaying them briefly before moving on to newer acquisitions. Sterling Wade sits at Luca's right hand, his sharp features and calculating eyes suggesting the analytical mind that helped him hack into the school's grading system sophomore year. His father's law firm specializes in making problems disappear for wealthy clients, a skill set that Sterling has inherited and refined for teenage applications. When secrets need discovering or reputations need destroying, Sterling provides the research and strategy that makes Luca's campaigns against social enemies devastatingly effective. Dex Hamilton completes their trio, his massive frame dominating the space around their table like a human mountain range. College scouts have already visited to discuss his defensive line prospects, though none of them inquire about the disciplinary reports that disappear from his file with suspicious regularity. Dex understands that his physical advantages can accomplish goals that money and intelligence cannot achieve, making him invaluable for situations requiring intimidation or actual violence. Together, they form what students privately call the Trinity. Though never within hearing range, for 3 years they have maintained their position through strategic cruelty disguised as harmless pranks, social manipulation presented as friendly guidance, and physical intimidation delivered with smiles that never reach their eyes. Teachers admire their leadership qualities, parents praise their community service records, and college admissions officers compete to recruit them for their prestigious programs. Harper keeps her attention focused on her book as Luca's laughter carries across the cafeteria. Loud enough to ensure that everyone hears his joke about freshman girls and their misguided attempts to join varsity cheerleading. His audience responds with the nervous laughter that accompanies jokes that cross lines, but come from people too powerful to challenge directly. She recognizes the sound from her previous schools where similar groups operated with identical tactics and equivalent immunity from consequences. The apple slice turns to sawdust in her mouth as fragments of conversation reach her corner table. Luca describes his weekend plans with predatory enthusiasm, detailing the house party his parents will unknowingly host while attending their charity gala. His voice carries the casual assumption that his desires will be fulfilled simply because he has expressed them. A confidence born from 17 years of having obstacles removed and paths smoothed by parental wealth and political connections. Harper finishes her apple methodically, placing the core in her brown paper bag with movements that suggest military precision rather than casual lunch cleanup. Her water bottle remains 3/4 full, positioned exactly parallel to the edge of her table. The book closes with a soft whisper of pages settling against each other, and she checks her watch with the practiced efficiency of someone whose schedule operates on precise timing rather than social convenience. 5 minutes remain before the lunch period ends, and she can escape to her afternoon chemistry class, where molecular structures and balanced equations provide refuge from the unpredictable variables of human interaction. Harper begins gathering her belongings with the same methodical care she applies to all her activities, each item finding its designated place in her worn canvas backpack. The chair across from her scrapes against linoleum as someone sits down without invitation. Harper's fingers pause in their careful arrangement of pencils and notebooks. Muscle, memory-triggering responses that Ryan taught her during their evening training sessions in their garage. Her breathing remains steady, but her weight shifts almost imperceptibly, creating better balance and positioning for rapid movement if necessary. Mind if I join you? The voice carries confident charm wrapped around an assumption of welcome rather than a genuine question seeking permission. Harper raises her eyes to meet Luca Morrison's bright smile, noting how his perfect teeth and practiced expression failed to extend to his pale blue eyes. She has encountered this particular combination of surface attraction and underlying coldness before in previous schools where similar boys operated with identical approaches and equivalent expectations of success. Actually, I do mind, Harper responds, her voice carrying quiet firmness without the stammering or blushing that typically accompanies interactions with Lincoln High's golden boy. I prefer eating alone. The rejection registers across Luca's features like a computer processing unexpected data. His smile falters for exactly 2 seconds before reforming with slightly less natural warmth and considerably more calculated intensity. In his experience, which spans 4 years of successful social dominance, girls respond to his attention with gratitude, excitement, or nervous flirtation. Direct refusal represents an entirely new category requiring analysis and strategic adjustment. I think there's been a misunderstanding, Luca continues, settling more firmly into his chosen seat despite her clear objection. I'm Luca Morrison. My father is Mayor Morrison, and I'm the quarterback of our championship football team. I basically run the social scene here at Lincoln. His introduction follows established patterns refined through countless successful conquests, beginning with credentials designed to overwhelm resistance through sheer social weight. Most girls respond to this information by reconsidering their initial hesitation, recognizing the enormous advantages that come with his approval and the devastating consequences that follow his disapproval. Harper studies his face with the clinical detachment Ryan taught her for assessing potential threats, cataloging details that reveal character beneath carefully constructed facades. Luca's expensive haircut and designer clothes suggest unlimited resources directed toward maintaining appearances. His posture demonstrates confidence bordering on arrogance, while his eyes show the calculating intelligence of someone accustomed to manipulating others for personal entertainment. Fascinating, Harper says, returning to her book with movements that dismiss both his presence and his credentials with equal indifference. I'm Harper Reynolds. I'm new here, and I'd like to finish my lunch in peace. The dismissal proves even more direct than her initial refusal. Delivered with calm certainty that his status holds no particular relevance to her daily existence, Luca experiences something he has rarely encountered since middle school: genuine confusion mixed with wounded pride. The emotional combination triggers defensive responses that bypass his usual calculated approach to human interaction. Sterling Wade materializes at Luca's shoulder, with the silent efficiency that has made him invaluable for gathering intelligence and providing backup during delicate social maneuvers. His appearance serves multiple functions, demonstrating Luca's resources while creating subtle psychological pressure through increased numbers and implied threat escalation. "Sorry about my friend here," Sterling interjects with practiced diplomacy, his voice carrying the smooth tones that have talked his way out of detention halls and into restricted computer systems. He's not used to meeting girls with actual intelligence. "I'm Sterling Wade. My father runs Wade Blackwood and Associates downtown." Harper recognizes the law firm's name from local television advertisements, promising aggressive representation for personal injury cases and criminal defense. The family connection explains Sterling's confident assumption that legal troubles can be resolved through connections rather than justice, a worldview that shapes his approach to rule-breaking and consequence avoidance. "Congratulations on your genetic lottery success," Harper responds without looking up from her book. "Now both of you can leave me alone." Her fingers tighten almost imperceptibly around her pencil as Dex Hamilton approaches their table, his massive frame casting shadows across her carefully organized lunch space. The psychology of intimidation through physical presence represents a tactic she understands from previous encounters, with similar groups where escalation follows predictable patterns designed to overwhelm resistance through accumulated pressure. Dex positions himself near the main walkway, effectively blocking Harper's most direct route to the cafeteria exit, while maintaining the appearance of casual conversation rather than deliberate entrapment. His presence transforms their friendly chat into something with more serious implications, suggesting that her continued resistance might lead to consequences beyond social awkwardness. "Actually, Harper," Sterling says, emphasizing her name with subtle mockery designed to establish dominance through familiarity, "I've been looking into your background since you started here 3 weeks ago. Interesting pattern of school transfers. Lincoln represents your 4th high school in 2 years. That's unusual for someone our age." The comment reveals investigative work that goes beyond casual curiosity, suggesting access to academic records and personal information that should remain private. Harper recognizes the tactic from previous encounters where powerful students used family connections to gather ammunition for psychological warfare, disguised as social interaction. Her pencil snaps in half with a sharp crack that cuts through the cafeteria's ambient noise like a gunshot. The broken pieces fall to the table as her fingers release them, creating small wooden fragments that roll toward the edge before settling into stillness. For 3 seconds, complete silence surrounds their table as the physical manifestation of internal pressure becomes visible to everyone within hearing range. "Some families move frequently when parents work for the government," Harper says, her voice maintaining steady control while her hands rest motionless on the table surface, "especially when their work involves protecting communities from people who think rules don't apply to them." The response carries subtle implications about law enforcement and federal authority, suggesting that her family background might include resources capable of challenging local power structures. Sterling's investigative confidence wavers slightly as he processes possibilities he hadn't considered during his initial research into her academic history. "What would you do if you were sitting in Harper's position right now, outnumbered and clearly being targeted by the most powerful group in school? Would you try to de-escalate, fight back, or something else entirely? Let me know in the comments below because Harper's next choice is about to change everything." Luca leans forward across the table, his mask of charming sophistication finally slipping to reveal something considerably harder underneath. The rejection has evolved beyond mere inconvenience to represent an active challenge to the social order he has spent years establishing and maintaining through careful application of rewards and punishments. "Here's what's going to happen," he says, his voice dropping to what he considers his most intimidating register. "You're going to apologize for being rude to me and my friends. Then you're going to accept my invitation to dinner this weekend, or your remaining time at Lincoln High is going to become very unpleasant very quickly." The ultimatum follows established patterns that have proven successful against previous targets, combining pseudo-romantic invitation with barely concealed threats designed to create compliance through fear. Most students understand that resistance to Luca's desires leads to systematic harassment that can destroy academic performance, social relationships, and emotional well-being. Harper's water bottle tips over as her elbow bumps against it. sending liquid spreading across the table toward her book and scattered pencil fragments. The spill appears accidental, but the timing suggests nervous reaction to mounting pressure from multiple sources. Water drips steadily from the table edge to the floor below, creating a rhythmic sound that punctuates the tension building around their conversation. She stands with fluid grace that suggests either ballet training or something more practical, gathering her soaked belongings with movements that create distance between herself and the three boys, while appearing to simply clean up an unfortunate accident. The action forces them to look up at her, subtly shifting power dynamics despite their numerical advantage and territorial control. "Actually," Harper says, slinging her damp backpack over her shoulder while maintaining eye contact with each boy in turn. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave me alone. Continue your little power games with people who care about your approval and pretend this conversation never occurred." Her voice carries quiet certainty that cuts through their assumptions about intimidation and compliance. The threat delivered with such calm confidence creates momentary confusion among boys accustomed to either immediate submission or fearful negotiation from their targets. "Or what?" Dex rumbles, his massive hands resting on the table like weapons waiting for deployment orders. Harper reaches down to retrieve her fallen bracelet, her fingers closing around the silver chain with movements that suggest reverence rather than mere jewelry recovery. When she straightens, something fundamental has shifted in her posture and expression. The careful vulnerability she maintained throughout their conversation has evaporated, replaced by steady resolve that makes all three boys unconsciously step backward. "Or you'll discover that some people bite back harder than you expect," she says quietly, walking toward the cafeteria exit with unhurried steps that suggest complete confidence in her ability to handle whatever consequences might follow. The silver bracelet catches fluorescent light as she fastens it around her wrist, the engraved words facing inward where only she can read their promise and reminder. Behind her, Luca Morrison stares at the spreading water stain on the table, processing the first direct challenge to his authority he has encountered since establishing his dominance over Lincoln High's social ecosystem. The lunch bell rings as Harper disappears into the hallway crowd, leaving three boys standing around a table covered in spilled water and broken pencil fragments, already planning the systematic destruction of someone who dared to suggest that their power might have limits. Sterling Wade's fingers dance across his laptop keyboard during 6th period advanced government class, his screen angled away from their substitute teacher, who remains absorbed in grading papers from another class. The institutional firewall that protects student records represents a minor inconvenience rather than an actual barrier for someone who learned to bypass security systems before he learned to drive. Harper Reynolds presents a puzzle that demands solution. Most students at Lincoln High operate within predictable parameters, their backgrounds containing standard elements that Sterling can catalog and weaponize within hours. Harper's digital footprint, however, reveals inconsistencies that suggest either sophisticated privacy protection or deliberate information scrubbing by parties with resources beyond typical family capabilities. Her academic transcript shows transfers from prestigious institutions across 3 different states, each move occurring during winter break periods that minimize disruption to her educational progress. The timing suggests careful planning rather than emergency relocations, though the underlying reasons remain obscured by bureaucratic language and sealed records that require additional investigation. Sterling's specialized software penetrates deeper into databases that most high school students couldn't access with unlimited time and professional guidance. Her standardized test scores place her in the 99th percentile for mathematical reasoning and reading comprehension, while her extracurricular activities focus on individual pursuits rather than team sports or social organizations. The pattern suggests someone comfortable with isolation and suspicious of group dynamics that require trust and vulnerability. The breakthrough comes through cross-referencing local newspaper archives with her previous addresses, revealing a tragedy that explains both her frequent relocations and her apparent immunity to social pressure. Ryan Reynolds, aged 19, died in a single car accident 2 years earlier while driving home from his sister's debate team competition. The article describes icy road conditions and a sharp curve that claimed multiple lives that winter, but Sterling's trained eye catches details that suggest additional complexity. The accident occurred at 11:30 p.m. on a Friday night, well past the time when high school debate competitions typically conclude. Police reports mentioned the discovery of an unregistered handgun in the vehicle wreckage, though charges were never filed due to Ryan's death and lack of evidence connecting the weapon to any criminal activity. Most significantly, Harper spent 48 hours in protective custody following the accident before being released to relatives who immediately enrolled her in a private boarding school in another state. Sterling screenshots the relevant articles and police reports, his excitement building as he recognizes the psychological leverage these discoveries provide. Harper's defensive reactions during lunch suggest deep emotional wounds surrounding her brother's death, creating vulnerability that Luca can exploit with surgical precision. The protective custody detail implies potential witness status or federal involvement that adds layers of complexity to her background story. His research reveals one additional detail that transforms their harassment campaign from casual entertainment into something with deeper satisfaction potential. Ryan Reynolds maintained a 4.0 grade average while earning his black belt in mixed martial arts, teaching self-defense classes at the local community center, and volunteering with at-risk youth programs. The obituary describes him as someone dedicated to protecting others, particularly his younger sister, whom he trained in defensive techniques from age 12. This information creates a psychological profile that Sterling finds particularly amusing. Harper Reynolds carries the guilt of surviving while her protector died, combined with whatever skills he taught her during their training sessions. The combination suggests someone capable of violence but restrained by emotional trauma and moral conditioning that prevents her from using aggressive solutions to social problems. By the time the final bell releases students from their afternoon classes, Sterling has compiled a comprehensive dossier that will provide Luca with everything necessary to systematically destroy Harper's carefully maintained emotional stability. The investigation reveals pressure points that can be exploited with precision, creating psychological torture that avoids physical evidence while inflicting maximum damage to her mental health and academic performance. Luca receives Sterling's findings during football practice, reviewing the printed summaries between defensive drills while Coach Patterson focuses on conditioning exercises for the upcoming championship game. The information confirms his initial instincts about Harper's hidden vulnerabilities while providing specific tactics for breaking down her resistance to his authority. The next morning arrives with unseasonably warm October weather that fills Lincoln High's corridors with the restless energy that accompanies unexpected temperature changes. Students shed jackets and sweaters, creating a carnival atmosphere that makes teachers nostalgic for summer vacation. And administrators nervous about behavioral incidents that correlate with meteorological disruptions. Harper approaches her locker with the methodical efficiency that characterizes all her school activities. Arriving precisely 7 minutes before, first period begins to avoid the crowded chaos that accompanies last-minute arrivals. Her combination lock yields to practiced fingers that have memorized the sequence through repetition rather than conscious effort, revealing the stark organization that governs her personal space. 3 photographs taped to the inside of her locker door capture moments from a life that existed before tragedy restructured her priorities and relationships. The largest shows Ryan teaching her proper stance for defensive positioning, his hands guiding her shoulders while she practices the footwork that might save her life during dangerous encounters. The second depicts their family during a camping trip to Yellowstone. All 4 members smiling with the easy confidence of people who believe their happiness represents permanent rather than temporary conditions. The third photograph shows only Ryan and Harper, taken during her 15th birthday celebration 2 weeks before the accident. His arm rests protectively around her shoulders, while she displays the silver bracelet that now serves as her primary connection to his memory and guidance. The image captures a moment of pure sibling affection, unmarked by the tragedy that would transform their relationship from present tense to past memory. Harper extracts her chemistry textbook and homework folder with movements that minimize the time her locker remains open, providing minimal opportunity for curious observers to catalog her personal belongings or emotional attachments. The photographs disappear behind closing metal as she completes her morning routine and heads toward first period advanced chemistry with Professor Williams. The harassment begins subtly during her transition between second and third period classes. Someone bumps into her in the crowded hallway with enough force to scatter her books across the polished floor, creating obstacles for other students while forcing Harper to scramble for her belongings. The collision appears accidental until she notices Dex Hamilton's distinctive size 14 sneakers among the feet, stepping carefully around her fallen materials. Her chemistry homework receives a mysterious coating of honey during lunch, discovered. When she opens her folder to review molecular structure diagrams before her afternoon exam, the sticky substance renders 3 pages illegible while creating adhesive problems that threaten to damage her other assignments. Harper cleans the mess methodically in the nearest bathroom, using paper towels and patience to salvage what she can while accepting the loss of work that represented 2 hours of careful preparation. The psychological warfare escalates during her final class of the day, when she discovers a printed photograph tucked between the pages of her literature anthology. The image shows Ryan's accident scene captured by someone with access to police evidence files that should remain restricted to law enforcement personnel. The photograph focuses on twisted metal and shattered glass, providing graphic details that newspaper coverage omitted out of respect for surviving family members. Harper's fingers tremble as she processes the image's implications, recognizing both the violation of her privacy and the message underlying its strategic placement. Someone has invested significant effort in researching her background, gaining access to sensitive materials and timing their psychological attack for maximum emotional impact. The photograph represents a declaration of war rather than simple harassment, requiring response rather than passive endurance. She slips the image into her backpack without examining it further, maintaining her composure despite the acid burn of resurfaced grief and violated memories. Ryan's voice echoes in her mind with advice he shared during their evening training sessions. Never let them see you break, little sister. Breaking happens in private. Fighting happens when you choose the time and place. The bracelet pulses against her wrist as Harper counts her breathing and prepares for whatever escalation tomorrow will bring. Luca Morrison and his crew have made their intentions clear through actions that cross lines between harassment and psychological abuse. Her promise to Ryan requires that she endure their attacks while remaining true to the principles he taught her about protecting others and choosing battles carefully. But endurance has limits, and Harper can feel those boundaries approaching with each calculated cruelty designed to strip away her emotional defenses. The broken pencil yesterday represented a warning that her control might not prove as absolute as she hoped. Today's photograph suggests her opponents understand exactly which memories can transform restraint into rage, creating conditions where even the most disciplined person might respond with violence that solves problems through force rather than wisdom. The school day concludes with Harper walking toward the student parking lot, her backpack heavy with books, and the weight of decisions that will shape how the remainder of her time at Lincoln High unfolds. Behind her, Sterling Wade uploads the accident scene photograph to social media platforms where her classmates will encounter it without context or preparation, ensuring that tomorrow's school day begins with everyone knowing about her family's tragedy and her vulnerability to specific forms of psychological pressure. Luca Morrison watches from his BMW as Harper climbs into her modest sedan, already planning the next phase of their campaign to break her resistance and establish his dominance over someone who dared to suggest his authority might have limits. He has broken stronger opponents through patient application of pressure to psychological weak points. And Harper Reynolds represents simply another target requiring appropriate tactics and sustained effort. Neither of them recognizes that Harper's training extends beyond the self-defense techniques Ryan taught her in their garage, or that her frequent school transfers resulted from situations where her defensive capabilities proved more extensive than anyone anticipated. Tomorrow, we'll test whether Luca's confidence in his power proves justified, or whether Harper's promise to her brother includes provisions for protecting herself when peaceful solutions become impossible. The silver bracelet catches afternoon sunlight as Harper starts her car engine, preparing for an evening of homework in memory. While somewhere across town, 3 boys plan the destruction of someone whose strength they have not yet learned to accurately measure. The next morning arrives with unseasonable warmth that transforms Lincoln High's corridors into a furnace of teenage energy and shortened tempers. Harper navigates the crowded hallways with practiced efficiency, her backpack positioned strategically to protect against accidental collisions that have become increasingly frequent since her cafeteria confrontation with Luca's crew. Sterling Wade's research has borne fruit during the overnight hours, manifesting in whispered conversations that follow Harper between classes like digital wildfire. The accident photographs circulate through group chats and social media platforms, accompanied by captions that transform tragedy into entertainment for students hungry for drama that doesn't directly threaten their own comfort zones. Did you see what happened to her brother? The whispers carry through chemistry lab stations with surgical precision designed to reach Harper's ears without providing clear targets for confrontation. Car accident 2 years ago. She was in the car when it happened. Harper maintains steady focus on her molecular diagrams, while peripheral awareness tracks the positioning of every student within striking distance. The bracelet pulses against her wrist with Ryan's remembered voice. Never let them see you break, little sister. Breaking happens in private. During third period literature, someone slides a manila envelope across her desk, containing printed copies of police reports that should remain sealed in evidence files. The documents reveal details about Ryan's accident that Harper has spent 2 years trying to forget, accompanied by a handwritten note in Luca's distinctive script. Tragic how weak people don't survive dangerous situations. Harper's pencil snaps between her fingers with a sound that cuts through Miss Henderson's lecture about symbolism in To Kill a Mockingbee Bird. The broken pieces roll across her desk as 12 heads turn toward the sharp crack, creating exactly the kind of attention she has worked to avoid since arriving at Lincoln High. Miss Reynolds, is everything all right? Mrs. Henderson's concern carries across the suddenly silent classroom, while Harper processes the violation of privacy and desecration of memory contained within the envelope's contents. Fine, Mrs. Henderson, just need a new pencil. The response emerges through gritted teeth as Harper forces her breathing to remain controlled, despite the acid burn of rage building behind her careful composure. The lunch period brings escalation that crosses every line Harper has established for acceptable behavior. She chooses a table near the faculty supervision area, hoping proximity to authority might discourage direct confrontation. The strategy backfires when Luca approaches with theatrical confidence, carrying a lunch tray that provides cover for psychological warfare disguised as casual conversation. He sits down without invitation, his presence immediately drawing attention from students who recognize the significance of his targeted focus on someone who has consistently rejected his advances. Sterling and Dex position themselves at nearby tables, creating a loose perimeter that prevents easy escape, while maintaining plausible deniability about coordinated harassment. Harper, we need to discuss your attitude problem. Luca begins, his voice carrying enough volume to ensure nearby students hear every word. Your brother Ryan would be disappointed seeing how rude you've become to people trying to be friendly. The mention of Ryan's name strikes like a physical blow, causing Harper's fork to freeze halfway to her mouth as grief and fury compete for control of her emotional responses. The calculated cruelty reveals how thoroughly Sterling's research has penetrated her psychological defenses, identifying exactly which memories can transform restraint into reaction. Leave my brother out of this, Harper responds quietly, her voice carrying warning that makes several nearby students unconsciously lean away from their table. Luca's smile widens with genuine pleasure as he recognizes the exact vulnerability his strategy was designed to exploit. Did he teach you those self-defense moves before or after he crashed his car into that tree? Because his defensive driving skills weren't exactly championship level. The fork bends in Harper's grip as muscle memory triggers responses that Ryan drilled into her during hundreds of training hours, designed to override conscious hesitation during life-threatening situations. Her brother's death becomes a weapon turned against her, used to strip away moral constraints that normally prevent violence in civilized settings. Maybe if he'd been stronger, he could have protected his little sister better, Sterling adds from his nearby table, his voice carrying just far enough to ensure Harper hears every syllable. Weak people don't survive dangerous situations. Harper stands with fluid, motion that suggests ballet training until observers. Note the perfect balance and ready positioning that characterizes combat preparation, rather than artistic expression. Her backpack slides to the floor with deliberate placement that clears potential obstacles while providing access to anything useful within its contents. Stand up, she says quietly, her voice carrying deadly calm that makes dozens of nearby students instinctively push back from their tables. If you want to talk about my brother, do it on your feet. The challenge represents exactly what Luca hoped to provoke, transforming psychological harassment into physical confrontation, where his advantages in size, numbers, and social position should ensure complete victory. He rises with theatrical flourish, his height advantage allowing him to tower over Harper in demonstration of dominance that has intimidated dozens of previous targets. Mrs. Rodriguez, the lunchroom supervisor, notices the developing confrontation and begins moving toward their table with hurried steps that suggest recognition of impending violence. Her approach creates the near-fail moment that threatens to derail Harper's response before it can begin. That's enough, both of you, Mrs. Rodriguez announces as she reaches their table. Miss Reynolds, return to your seat immediately. Mr. Morrison, you need to. She's been threatening us all week. Luca interrupts with practiced innocence, his voice projecting concern that reaches surrounding tables. We've tried to be friendly, but she keeps talking about violence and making everyone uncomfortable. The accusation flips the narrative with surgical precision, transforming Luca from aggressor to victim, while positioning Harper as the unstable newcomer who poses a threat to Lincoln High's peaceful environment. Several students nod in apparent agreement, their responses suggesting either genuine belief or calculated support for the school's social hierarchy. Ms. Rodriguez turns toward Harper with suspicion, replacing her previous concern, recognizing what appears to be a classic case of new student acting out for attention. Miss Reynolds, you'll need to come with me to the principal's office. This kind of disruption won't be tolerated. The injustice of being blamed for harassment she didn't initiate pushes Harper beyond the breaking point that Ryan's training was designed to establish. When authority figures side with abusers against victims, defensive measures become necessary, regardless of institutional consequences or social disapproval. Actually, Harper says, her voice cutting through the cafeteria noise with crystal clarity, here's what really happened. She turns toward the dozens of cell phones that have emerged to document whatever happens next, addressing her comments to the cameras that will preserve this moment for immediate broadcast across social media platforms. Luca Morrison and his friends have spent days harassing me about my brother's death, vandalizing my property, and threatening me with forged documents. The accusations hang in the air like smoke from discharged weapons, while Harper reaches into her backpack to retrieve the envelope containing police reports and accident photographs. They obtained sealed police files illegally and used my family's tragedy to try to break me down psychologically. Sterling Wade abandons his observer position to prevent further revelations, moving toward Harper with aggressive intent that dozens of student cameras capture from multiple angles. She's lying. We never Harper's chemistry textbook connects with Sterling's temple at precisely the velocity needed to render him unconscious without causing permanent damage. The heavy volume contains enough mass to deliver devastating impact while remaining technically non-lethal, satisfying both tactical requirements and legal constraints that Ryan emphasized during their training sessions. Dex Hamilton charges forward with the momentum that has broken offensive lines and classroom furniture, his massive frame providing intimidation that has cleared paths through crowded hallways for 4 years. Harper sidesteps his rush while extending her leg at exactly the angle needed to send his own force into the nearest support pillar, with an impact that shakes dust from ceiling tiles. Luca produces what appears to be a telescoping baton from his jacket pocket, the weapon suggesting premeditation that transforms harassment into assault with deadly weapons. The metal rod extends with mechanical precision as he swings toward Harper's head with enough force to cause serious injury or death. Harper's defensive response flows from muscle memory that bypasses conscious decision-making, her right hand deflecting the weapon while her left drives Luca's face into the lunch table with a sound like breaking wood. Chocolate milk explodes across the surface as his unconscious body slides toward the floor, leaving him motionless among scattered food debris. The entire confrontation concludes in 8.3 seconds according to timestamps on dozens of student cell phones that capture every moment from multiple angles. Harper stands among the wreckage of Lincoln High's most powerful social group, her breathing controlled and her white sweater somehow remaining pristine despite the violence that has just concluded. Principal Davidson arrives as sirens announce emergency response vehicles approaching the school's main entrance. His assessment reveals one girl standing calmly among 3 unconscious boys surrounded by overturned furniture and scattered evidence that suggests systematic harassment escalating into attempted assault. Everyone back away, Principal Davidson commands while pulling out his radio to coordinate with arriving emergency personnel. Miss Reynolds, step away from the other students and remain where I can see you. Harper complies with fluid grace, moving to the designated position while maintaining visual contact with potential threats and clear access to emergency exits. Her positioning demonstrates continued tactical awareness despite the conclusion of active combat, suggesting training that extends beyond simple self-defense techniques. Emergency medical personnel tend to the unconscious boys while police officers begin processing witness statements from students whose cell phone footage provides comprehensive documentation of the entire confrontation. The video evidence reveals systematic harassment escalating into physical assault, followed by defensive response that utilized minimal necessary force to neutralize multiple attackers. Officer Janet Murphy reviews the clearest footage while interviewing Harper in Principal Davidson's office, her expression shifting from suspicion to professional respect as she recognizes the precision and restraint demonstrated throughout the confrontation. Harper's actions follow established legal precedents for self-defense against multiple assailants, particularly when attackers demonstrate premeditation and weapons possession. The investigation expands rapidly as video footage spreads across social media platforms, generating thousands of views and comments that transform a local incident into viral content. Students from other schools share similar experiences with systematic harassment, while parents demand explanations for institutional failures that allowed such behavior to continue unchecked. Mayor Morrison arrives at Lincoln High with legal representation and political influence that has resolved previous problems involving his son's aggressive behavior. His confident assumption that money and connections will minimize consequences faces unexpected obstacles when confronted with video evidence and weapons charges that exceed his authority to influence. This is clearly self-defense. Attorney Imra Sada's fence attorney Sarah Chen explains, while reviewing the comprehensive documentation captured by student witnesses. 3 young men systematically harassed my client, obtained confidential materials through illegal means, and initiated assault with weapons in full view of multiple cameras. Federal authorities begin investigating how sealed police files reached civilian hands, while additional students come forward with testimony about harassment campaigns spanning multiple academic years. Jennifer Walsh, who transferred from Lincoln the previous spring, provides evidence about psychological torture that drove her to attempt suicide, rather than continue enduring daily humiliation designed to break her resistance. Within 72 hours, the investigation explodes into national headlines, as video footage demonstrates how privilege and institutional complicity enabled systematic abuse to continue unchecked. Bank records reveal that Morrison family donations influenced school policies, while communication logs expose coordination between school administrators and wealthy parents to suppress previous complaints. Luca Morrison faces assault charges, weapons violations, and federal harassment crimes that eliminate his college prospects while ensuring criminal conviction regardless of his father's political connections. Sterling Wade discovers that hacking government databases carries prison sentences that wealthy parents cannot purchase away through charitable donations. Dex Hamilton Scholarship offers disappear as universities distance themselves from students associated with documented harassment campaigns. Harper returns to classes after 2 days of administrative leave, though her status as victim rather than perpetrator becomes clear when video evidence eliminates any possibility of criminal charges. The cafeteria erupts in spontaneous applause when she enters for lunch, though she chooses the same corner table where everything began. Marcus Chen joins her without invitation, his presence providing social validation that encourages other students to approach someone who proved that even the most privileged bullies face consequences when they target prepared opponents. The conversation focuses on normal teenage concerns rather than recent violence. Though Harper notices how many students glance toward her table with expressions mixing admiration and nervous respect. 3 weeks later, Harper sits alone in Miller's diner, reviewing chemistry homework while processing the ongoing implications of her actions. The bracelet catches lamplight as she traces molecular diagrams that seem simple compared to the social chemistry that transformed her from invisible outsider into reluctant symbol of resistance. Her phone buzzes with a text from an unknown number containing only coordinates and a timestamp for next Tuesday. The message suggests that Lincoln High's power structures extend beyond 3 boys whose criminal behavior has been exposed and punished through legal channels rather than administrative discipline. Harper saves the message while continuing her homework, recognizing that her promise to Ryan includes protecting other students from systematic abuse. The silver inscription catches her eye as she closes her textbook. To my little sister, be strong like I taught you. Outside the diner's window, Lincoln High's lights shine across autumn darkness while Harper Reynolds drives toward whatever challenge awaits someone who proved that strength sometimes requires action rather than patience. Though choosing when and how to act remains the most difficult lesson her brother tried to teach her before running out of time to finish her education in survival.